Hey guys, welcome back to Two Guys in Hockey Talk for another week of talking with my amazing co-host and our guest here tonight. Welcome, Pavel.
Oh, thank you, Evan. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. We love it. This is Season 4, Episode 12. Just before you introduce our guest, Evan, let's remember, everyone, that we tune in every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We talk all things hockey, not just the NHL. But, Evan, why don't you introduce our wonderful guest today?
Hey, sounds absolutely incredible. I just want to welcome tonight's guest. We're honored to have on former Ward 6 Councillor Jeff Davison. He's an executive leader. He is doing so many things we cannot count what he is doing. He was the former chair of the Event Center Assessment Committee in Calgary. That's in Calgary, Canada, for those following in the United States and other places of the world. He was the one that helped kind of spearhead and put the arena deal that you all know does not exist today that would benefit the NHL Calgary Flames in the city of Calgary. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. It's been a long time in wait trying to get you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm really happy to be here.
All right, Pavel, we have to ask the question we always ask. You go ahead and start her off.
We do. But before we do, make sure you grab your bevy. I see that Jeff already has his water, unless that's vodka. That's okay, too.
It would be a lot of vodka. It's, yeah.
Okay.
We don't judge here. We encourage. We highlight and encourage.
I said, look, like, I'm a recovering politician. If I was a politician, it would be vodka. Like,
after dealing with everything you had to deal with, I might be drinking that much vodka too.
Exactly.
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the arena deal and everything Calgary-based, and we're going to get some of your thoughts on the Flames and things like that around the NHL. But first off, where did your love of hockey first come about, and do you have a passion for the sport? Do you follow it? What are your thoughts on the NHL and hockey in general?
You know, I'll give you a little insight. I was with King one day when we were talking back in about 2018. And he asked me almost that exact same question. You know, we were talking about the deal. We were talking about how we're going to make things work. And he says, where does this passion for hockey come from? And I said, well, Ken, I'll let you in on a little secret. And he says, what's that? And I said, I actually don't know how to skate. And he was like, pardon? I said, look, like, my passion for hockey is, look, I follow it, and obviously I love the Flames. Just I'm a Calgarian, born and raised, and love the city, love the team. But I didn't grow up playing hockey, and I'm not sort of that guy who follows it, knowing every player and every game and all the stats. I just don't. Where I came into this was truly out of community, right? It was truly about, how do we engage more with our NHL teams? I mean, they not only contribute significantly to the economic impact of cities, but the culture that those cities create and the following that they have, right? It's really about, building that team spirit and keeping community alive. And that's really where I came into the deal.
That's pretty incredible to hear. So we're going to get a little bit into the details. Evan's going to lead the next question, but kind of a follow-up. So then, do you follow mostly Calgary Flames, given your background, or are you a fan of all teams? You just kind of enjoy the sport? Or what do you like? Where does your allegiance lies?
Yeah, totally.
And remember, we do have Flames fans here, so
I am a Flames a diehard fan. I love going to games. Look, I think you go back to last year's playoff run, and that place was just electric in there, right? And for me, it's it's really easy for people to often say, well, hockey doesn't contribute to community, or hockey doesn't do this or that. And I challenge people, anytime you're in a stadium like that, or frankly, one of the 10,000 plus people that were standing in front of the arena that night, I beg to differ. It contributes significantly to community, and it's a part of the cultural fabric of who Calgary is.
Absolutely. So just to get a little bit of context here for all our viewers, so we are talking about the arena deal that had fallen through, that had been all set up and taken place. Jeff, who is our guest here tonight out of Calgary, had spearheaded that, was the chair, was on council. Now, just to give a background for if you're not very familiar with Calgary, the Saddle Dome that they have there, which we'll talk a little bit in detail about some of the design, it was completed and opened in 1983 as part of Calgary hosting the 88 Olympics. Now, the cost back then, it was shared between Calgary, the province, the government of Canada. I think there was like around 30 million, 5 million from Olympic. It was estimated to initially cost, I believe it was around 60 million. I believe in the end it was close to 100 million. Am I right, Jeff?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So now the difference is the city ended up paying the difference, of course, because of the Olympics. But let's jump forward. Now, could you update us, the viewers, on why a new arena was needed, and maybe talk about the joint effort that was put together that you were a part of as chair of that committee?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go back into even the early 2000s, Calgary's been talking about a new facility for, since at least 2005. The best and the worst thing about that facility, the Saddle Dome, was the design, right? There's very limited things you can do with it. You can't cut the roof off of it and kind of grow the facility. And so by way of where we got to in 2017, 2018, it was I think it's the oldest facility in the league now.
Wow.
Or at least the second oldest, something like that. There's structural issues with the facility itself, mainly with respect to the roof. I mean, it is starting to let go. So, I mean, again, you have to think about, should we spend tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars? I think the cost was into the 300s on repairing an old facility. Or if we had an opportunity to move the facility out and become a pivotal point of building community, sort of that anchor piece, would that be more effective? And when you start to look at the costs, building a new facility made a lot of sense. So in 2015, they had started talking about the Calgary Next project. That was sort of the $1.6 billion idea of build, a facility that could house NHL, CFL, everything all in one type of thing. The challenge when trying to build that, in particular in the west end of downtown, was that the ground A has significant creosote damage. So there's $100 million plus cleanup that has to be done there. There's no significant development that's really taking place on the west end of downtown. Okay. Building community there became sort of an issue. And then there's sort of the dump time. The NHL has a dump time of about 30 minutes. When you build a new facility, you have to be able to evacuate that building, including parking, out and off in 30 minutes. The challenge with where that would have been is that there was limited access and egress from the site. And so geographically, it was kind of bound by challenges. And so we went to look at sort of the old facility in Victoria Park and thought, well, if we could actually bring this out, build around it, support community growth and encourage development, okay, well, now we have a piece to work with, right? So in 2017, that was the undertaking we started.
Excellent. Oh, so now, sorry. I'm just going to jump in. So I have a kind of a two-parter question. So for those people that know Calgary, like as soon as you're entering the city, the Saddle Dome, like it's beautiful, the shape is kind of unique. But behind the scenes, like before you get on the ice with the product that you see with the teams playing, wherever it may be, and even with the championships in the late 80s, right? What goes into the business plan or the dynamics of the business models / conversations that you're having with all the groups, whether it's the Calgary Entertainment Sports Group, right, however you want to pronounce it. What does that look like with the city, with the public, and with all kind of stakeholders involved? Because that's a big part of it. And the second part of it, what are some of those costs that go into it? Like, what does that tentative idea go? Like, how much does the city put in? How much do taxpayers put in? How much does the business itself, like the Calgary group, put in?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a large question, right? I mean, I think when you go back and you think about it, I mean, what you have to look for is, if you're going to use public dollars, there has to be public benefit. So, when you're looking at these facilities, it's not just as simple as maybe a municipality and a team, right? There's a lot of stakeholders that have to be sort of consulted with. First and foremost is the citizens, right? And so we went through between sort of 2016 to 2018, one of the largest undertakings of public engagement ever done in the city of Calgary. Talking about if we could build a district, what would we want that district to be? And a lot of what came back was that we want that anchor facility. And so currently we're building a brand new Tier 1 convention center called the BMO Center, which is something I also helped spearhead. And, the idea was, okay, well, if we've got a convention center, if we can build sort of, the arena component or the event center, as I call it, because I believe it's more than just hockey. It's really, it's the concerts, it's the activities you can create. This was all adjacent to the Stampede grounds, which is a unique asset in a downtown anyway. There's no other area in North America that has the readily available downtown open land mass adjacent to a downtown that Calgary has, right? So it made it an ideal area to say, well, if we've got a convention center, if we've got an event center, if we can build hotels, we can build condos, we've got development partners, we've got the Stampede as a partner. Okay, well, now we have something where we can go. Not to mention the city is now running, the brand new Green Line right through that district, right? So you start to get all the components together of saying, okay, well, now we can actually build some success into this district. And it becomes a district conversation. But once you get to that district conversation, you have to come back to the idea that what is that anchor piece? And the anchor piece has to work. So, and the second part of the question is, well, how do you fund it, right? The way you kind of look at this is you have to look at the deal we kind of put together in 2017. It was really about like a 50-50 share with the city of Calgary and Calgary Sport and Entertainment Corporation, who owns the Flames. So the idea was that we'll both put 50-50 in, but where the deal got unique is that we got a portion of the ticket tax, right? So a portion of the ticket tax came back to the city. So I was then able to say, well, if we're going to use public dollars for public benefit, I want to make sure that we get our money back, right? Like I agree, like we're going to own and operate the facility. It is a civic facility that the Flames will become the operating partner on. However, I want some of that money back. And so effectively the deal we had would have been about 7 to 10 years, depending on, how construction timing worked and everything. The city would have recouped their $300 million in the deal out of that ticket tax. And then you have to think about on top of that, well, if we're building a district now, you create placemaking, you create, areas of entertainment, like we've seen in Nashville, Kansas City, Columbus, LA Live, to name a few examples of people that have done it right. You build that district, and what it does then is develop a tax base, which obviously the municipality gets the advantage of that tax uplift as well.
And it's interesting because you look at other cities. I mean, that's one of the cool thing about municipal and provincial kind of affairs is that you kind of look at other municipalities and provinces or states, and if it's the U.S., and kind of compare like what was positive, what worked, what didn't. But Evan, I'll let you take over.
Yeah. So so before we go there, I need you to put your Calgary hat on for a sec. So we got someone coming on here, and so they're asking, is Calgary going to be in Phoenix in 5 years? Obviously, they think Phoenix is going somewhere else.
Yeah, let's just say Phoenix, first of all, has created their own problems, right? They got to sort that out on themselves. So, but I mean, a good example actually in thinking, Phoenix is a good example of where, the facility that's down there, frankly, was never built in the right spot, right? So, the idea would be if you can actually move that somewhere else that would be more effective, can you reach a different caption area? So I actually agree with what's kind of happening there now. And I think Phoenix is there to stay, but I don't think the Flames by any means are going to Phoenix. So
that's true. But I think that also comes in Phoenix more so from the lack of accountability from ownership from before Alex Moreno took over, and I know he's a billionaire, but not paying bills is a big no-no in Glendale. So even if they wanted to look at Tempe as a new option to not pay your bills, I mean, it's not a clerical error for me when I don't pay my bills, but that's an aside story.
Yeah, let's use the starting point that paying your bills anywhere is necessary, and if that's ground zero, okay, well now we can have a different conversation.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm on council and I'm waiting to pass something for this team and they haven't paid their bills previous, they just forgot. I'd already be concerned, but that's a whole other story. And just so everyone knows, so Zill actually just got hold of me a couple days ago. On Sunday, I have a short little video. We'll play it next week. I didn't get a chance to upload it. She was in Tucson to watch the AHL team because she's planning to check at both places while she's down. So I believe, Zill, you wrote that you're trucking through Idaho today. So, hey, thanks for the question here. But now I'm going to ask a real question that actually you don't have to defend, or you might want to defend. Now, was there any attempt from the new city council, because everything looked like it was on board? I believe it was only a month they were in, and the deal was to be signed, and then it was lost. If you can kind of clarify that, as well as when the deal was now all but done, was there an amount of money that was lost to the city and all the work that was put in, and possibly to the Flames franchise?
Yeah, so one of the big things I do want to clarify is that in 2018 we signed a deal. So and then in 2020 we made some changes to that deal, again signing it with the Flames. So there's no misconception here. This was an agreed upon deal that was within 2 weeks of construction starting. Okay. So when we talk and this is the problem with Calgary. There has been on again, off again talk about this facility since 2003, 2005, really. right? And so there's a lot of confusion in the public. The reality is, in 2018, we signed a deal. In 2020, we signed a subsequent deal to just add additional capital because by then inflation was starting to take over. But this thing was a done and moving forward project.
Okay.
And like I say, it was within 2 weeks of breaking ground on the project. And so, arbitrarily what had happened was there was an ask that the city mayor made, tried to change the terms of a signed and agreed upon deal. And that deal, obviously fell apart, right? I don't know many people that would negotiate in business in any way, shape, or form, have a private conversation, try to work things out, and then 20 minutes later, immediately announce on Twitter that the deal is done, right?
Yeah.
It was, and it was really, I think, an unfair move to council. Council wanted to hold an emergency meeting of it. The mayor would not let them do that. It was a bad scene all around because the mayor cannot arbitrarily make this decision on her own. It has to be a council decision. That was written right into the parameters of the agreements that we signed in 2020. So, I do like to clarify that because it really is an important point to where and how do we go forward from here. And I totally forgot your second half of that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I'll come back to that in a sec. It was about how much money was lost. But before we do that, though, let me just ask a question to clarify. If the mayor can't do that, then how were they able to do that? Because that's what they did, essentially, was it not?
Well, I think the city made a very strong move in the court of public opinion and walked away from the deal. And subsequent to that, you're right, there was a cost to it. The tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars were paid out to the contracts that were already moving on procuring and getting the deal done, right? Like we were moving into construction period. The cost did go up from the original 550 we thought to 605. But the reality with that was we were okay with that. The Flames signed on to take on all the cost overruns beyond that, which I thought was coming into an inflationary period exceptional. Again, we still could work the terms of the deal, so we got all of our money back out of it.
Yeah.
But now you're paying out $30+ million in contracts for nothing, right? All to go back to the table and start that work again. So, the 605, 620 mark just became 650. And, unfortunately with inflation today, you're looking at more 875 to build the exact same thing today.
Yeah. Now you make some valid points. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is that, and we talked about this yesterday a little bit, but people get sound bites in the media. And, to no fault of their own, but it's like, well, the mayor stepped away, or this deal wasn't good, or the city was losing money, or Calgary, the Flames organization was benefiting. But as you alluded to a little bit earlier, and I will attest to in Edmonton when they replenished the arena here and remade it here after Rexall was old, it really did revitalize a bit of downtown. Are there problems and ongoing concerns? Always will be. There's always going to be things. But it is a benefit to the city because it's not just the Flames that are going to be participating in there. There's concerts, there's other acts that are going to come through, and as you were alluding to, there's the hotels, the restaurants, all those businesses coming in and pouring money into. And you can maybe explain this to me, and I could be wrong, but the main form of income that most cities have, municipalities, is property tax. So apart from everything else, that's kind of where the city gains its money. Now, noting that, I know there was an article that Evan shared with us about a potential 1,000-lot parking lot, about $64 million that was potentially included and then was going to be near that land. Is there any merit or truth to that article, or was there anything? Or am I forgetting something?
Yeah, let me throw this in. The reason that I had mentioned it in there was, and just so you guys know, we actually were going to pre-record tonight, and Jeff cleared out room tonight to be able to come on live with you guys. So last night I was mentioning because through on Twitter and on some of the Facebook groups, they're adding this other parking lot situation, saying, well, that's why, and people had backed out. So I just think it's good for those in Calgary, whether they're hockey fans or not hockey fans, to have a little clarity on this other adjacent lot with parking.
Yeah, as I often say in politics these days, don't let facts get in the way of a good story, right? I mean, what I find actually funny is the parking lot in question. If you actually Google that area on Google Maps, somebody went in there and they labeled the parking lot the Jeff Davison Parkade. And I was like, So no, there's no $64 million parking. There's a private piece of land that was part of what we did have to do is sort of short-term lease some land, because you got to remember, like, this is all about, really logistical strategy, right? You've got a $550 million tier 1 convention center being built adjacent, like directly adjacent to what the new event center would have been. So the staging areas just for construction alone within the Rivers District it was a challenge, right? You've still got to operate Stampede. You still got to make sure you can go through there. On top of all of that, you then have Green Line they're starting to do the underground work for Green Line. So the light rail transit system that'll go through that area, for those who don't know, which is underground. So there's a lot of challenges in that area. And so space became really tight and really precious, frankly, as all of these mega projects were going to be kind of trying to build in and around one another. But there was no sort of $64 million parking issue. It's like, it sounds like a game show when you put it that way. It's the $64 million parking issue that the city's going to have to deal with. It's like the city built a $90 million parkade adjacent to this, which could have cost $13 million. But, hey.
I would be happy
Sure.
Decide having a sidewalk named after me, maybe by accident, like just typing in my initials. So having the Jeff Davison parking lot would have been pretty cool to have, right? An honor for you in the city of Calgary.
It was a buddy of mine who's like, there's a bus barns over there, and one of the transit drivers here in the city, he just started, and he Googled where to go to for his first day of driving, and sent me this picture. He's like, "Hey, dude, did you ever notice that this parkade has your name on it?" And I was like, "What?" It's like, "No, seriously, look." I was like, "Yeah."
I'm just wondering, is there a possibility of squatters' rights, and then you could claim, the actual income that comes from everybody parking there?
I will tell you that is one of the most valuable pieces of land in downtown Calgary. So if I could claim it, I'm on it, man.
Yeah, even a 1,000-foot square section, eh?
Yeah.
That's all you need. Okay, so let me ask you this question. So there's been a lot of recent talk now on online, especially because who uses papers nowadays, right? That there are now new formal arena talks that are back on. That they've put a committee back together with the Flames Corporation. If there is, are you connected in any way, or talking to people on the side, or? And what do you know of what is actually happening?
So the city has struck a committee again. They've sort of brought back the original committee that I would have founded to move forward with. Look, council was not quite happy with the direction of this and felt sort of left in the dark when they should have had a conversation and made a decision as a collective. So it was the right thing to do to start this. And look, like it would be very easy for me to just hack on and hate and do what the reality is the city needs this facility. Like, in my opinion, it is one of the most important pieces of infrastructure this city needs, for all the reasons we've just discussed, right? The development, the entertainment district, all of those things. I continue to stand by that, and I'm cautiously optimistic that this will, move forward in a positive direction. But if I'm sort of the team right now, and I'm not involved in the conversation, I've tried to, I provide advice to anybody who asks, and that does happen on sort of occasion from both sides. But you have to let sort of the government of the day do the job of the government of the day, right? And make the right decision for the city to move forward. And so you can't get hung up on what the past deal was. That deal has been broken up, and now we have to think about, how do we make this work for the city going forward in a world where, I think they've got a couple of challenges. Number one is going to be cost, right? You can't come back to the table with the exact same design and the exact same plan. And again, it's not because between the city and the Flames, we couldn't agree to the same thing. It's really because there's 15 other major stakeholders that have to be part and parcel to these agreements. And so, by way of canceling a deal, you've cost them a lot of money and time as well. The other thing that they're going to face is really the challenge of, if the city decides to go down the path of paying 100% of the cost on this, which some other cities have done, you really have to justify it in a world where the narrative has become, millions for billionaires in the city of Calgary, right? Which is why it was really important to me that if we were going to invest together, we got paid out together. And that's where sort of, it was more like mortgaging a facility. Once the facility was paid off, we got all of our money back and, owned a tangible asset going forward. The other big piece of this is really going to be trust, right? If I'm a business person here in Calgary, of which I now am, I don't understand how you trust a council that does this, right? Because, going forward, the biggest problem you're going to have is your partner's always going to feel like at any time you might just yank the rug out from under them, right? And I've spent a lot of time working with the province and working with groups coming into the province, and I can tell you, the cancellation of this facility has done some damage locally. People look at this to say, well, why would I invest there now, right?
Yeah.
And so there's some reputational harm and damage that's been done that really has to be overcome before I think you're going to be able to stand in front of the public and tell them what this thing could be.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of interesting because when you're talking about the damage, I mean, there was stuff. It was not looking good. There were, I mean, threats, even dealing up in Edmonton with Kate's. The deal was going to fall apart, and it was carried over between two mayors, right? To get finalized and stuff. But it did take a continuation of the council to stay strong, and the mayor supporting the former mayor. But interesting enough, I know a lot of people in Edmonton at the time were quite upset because the money that they were putting in, though, was much cheaper to borrow off the city. And so the monies that they're actually getting are borrowing off them. But at the same time, people are saying, listen, and to, their cause, they actually started paying off with the community tax levy within the district area much faster than they actually even anticipated. And that's in spite of the pandemic even happening that stopped one of the downtown buildings, and with everything they're dealing with. So, but I think that, if everyone doesn't put their heads together and find a way to get past it, this is going to get more and more expensive every day. And it will put the Flames in a bad position that if we're still talking about this in 2 years, then there becomes an issue because they cannot make money off, like you said, that building. So before we're going to ask you a question around hockey. Maybe just explain to people. What's that?
I said, is that what we're supposed to talk about?
Well, besides the arena for hockey, but maybe explain to people why they can't make money with the building just being from Calgary, and why a lot of events and things can't be used due to the type of roof that the structure that's built there.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, it's really because the structure's compromised, right? It's really felt the age, and the wear and tear on the building is coming to a point where, as a city, you have to decide: do you want to put hundreds of millions of dollars into it to fix it, or do you want to just build something new, arguably, which could perform better? The challenge with a lot of facilities, and I used to go through this argument all the time with our former mayor. He would say, well, look at Houston building a facility out in their downtown, and it doesn't work, and it didn't activate anything, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, single point data is rarely useful, right? Like, the reality is, don't build things in the middle of a parking lot. Incorporate it into a district like those other cities we want to emulate, right? Like, they've done it right. Edmonton is a good example of one of Calgary's problems. You've got sort of a problematic downtown you've got to fix. We've got to build tax base in an area where, frankly, currently our downtown on that end is home to the world's most least impressive parking lots. You have to think about how you're going to build community and activation spaces, right? And if you can do that, you can create a different dynamic. And again, it's not that you can't make money work in the current Saddle Dome. You can make your break even on all of those things, but you're not making it on concerts. Okay. You're being bypassed by all the mega facilities that exist, and artists just don't want to play there. You're limited in terms of catchment area, in terms of how many people will buy seasons tickets or tickets to a hockey game, whether that's WHL, AHL, the Flames, whatever, right? Like there's just a limited amount of people in any given municipality or jurisdiction that you're going to appeal to. So you've got limited ways to program that space now to a point where you want to be programming it. In a new facility, you could be looking at programming like 250 days a year, right? You could have something in there at all times. In particular, if you create spaces that, maybe you don't need a full bowl, maybe you need half a bowl, maybe you can use the lobby areas, maybe you can activate things. But when you activate it at that street level, at that community level, you have different abilities to utilize the building for programming. I mean, we were working in a street-facing avenue on the one side that all would have been restaurants and shops and different things. So it's creating that walkable space that you could shut down the roads, frankly, on those sort of red mile moments when you've got people pouring into the streets and want to just be at the facility, not even in it. You create those public spaces that are safe for people to be in, right?
Cool.
No, fair enough. And I have a few thoughts here. As an aside, I admire architectural designs, like concept art. And I thought the design for the arena that was tentatively proposed looked really incredible and amazing. And even some of the other infrastructure and buildings that Calgary has, it's really cool. Like the new public library, if you guys ever get out there, looks really cool. The one in Edmonton, inside looks cool, outside looks like a tank. But excuse me, but again, it's that concept thing that looks really awesome.
Yeah.
I guess the thing that kind of people need to understand, and I think maybe you can attest to this, is that Calgary has very passionate fans. I mean, hockey is in Canada a very passionate thing, and every city, whether it's Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto, you see it. And so when things like this, and even in Edmonton, when the whole Daryl Cates wanting to move the team out, and Steve Mandel at the time, the former mayor, that those dynamics are going to New York to try to broker a deal. It just became too public. And sometimes you need those things to stay behind the scenes. I know they can seem mundane and boring, but you need them. You don't need them on the forefront, because then it muddies the water. And then people are really getting into why do billionaires get a tax break, or why do they there? Like it's more nuanced than that. So, but do you want to share any final thoughts about the arena, about the deal, anything that you want to portray to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, look, like I think that the public has to understand that when it comes to actually doing the work, you need the time and you need the freedom to do that work, right? You can't strike deals out in public on all things. Where it becomes responsible to talk about transparency and talk about the deal is once you have something to talk about, putting that forward to the public, right? Let's talk about things that are now tangible and what we're talking about and the way we see the deal working versus sort of like, holding session in the court of public opinion, right? If you did that, you wouldn't get anywhere, frankly. And you wouldn't see that in any normal course of business. And of course, every hockey team is a business, right? And you have to treat it as such. So you have to treat private sector partners, whether they're sport, energy, technology, it doesn't matter. They're a private sector partner that operates in a different manner than a municipality. But again, where you go and you do the work and you put in the effort, it's not that you're signing something and telling people after the fact. It's going to do the work and then presenting people with what we have that we want to talk about, and then provide that input and feedback and say, okay, is this something that we can get behind? And I think, it's really hard for any politician doing that because, again, facts have no place in storytelling these days, right? And so it's really hard to control the narrative. Media will pick up one angle that might not be true, and all of a sudden, the narrative is about a $64 million parking lot, right? Like you just see it happen all the time, right? So you have to be able to control the pieces of doing the work before you can talk about the work.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, so Aaron Singleton, who you were on with on Inside Pints, he wants to say your beard is looking good.
Thanks, man.
And welcome to the podcast. So actually, Aaron was early on when we started getting going. He was getting the idea of his Inside Pints because we actually started the podcast when we realized hockey was going down with the pandemic and stuff. So, but hey, no, excellent. So, okay, so here's a big question to end off with. Many hockey fans, they love to play armchair GM. Let's just say you're the GM for the year for what ails the Calgary Flames. You're going to hold steady to the course. You're not going to panic. What do you see yourself doing currently on the ice?
Well, first of all, I'd always prefer to be an owner than a GM. I think a GM's job is a lot like a politician's, right? Like, the nice thing about being out of politics is that nobody outside my own home yells at me anymore. So, I feel for these GMs because they get the same treatment. I think it's early days, right? It's a new team. It's putting things together. I think your first couple of games, everybody wants to say, oh, look, they're on a streak. They're going to do it this year. They're whatever. The reality is it takes time to get to kind of playing with one another, understand the plays, understand how they're working together. And that can't be determined, in my opinion, in the first couple of games, right? I think, once the season starts to get a little more serious and we start really playing for it, I think you're gonna see some changes there, and I think people are gonna see some positive momentum in the Flames this year.
Very good, very good. Well, we usually like to say here that we're two guys and overtime because we take way too long for all the questions. We appreciate, Jeff, you being on the show. Before we finish up, and if Evan has any final thoughts, we're just wondering, is there a way people can connect with you, or is there a way you connect with people, whether it's in Calgary or somewhere abroad? where can they find you, or do you want to be found, or any social media? No, I mean, we don't know. I mean, you're on the show, we appreciate it, but maybe after this you're like, I'm gonna go back to just being a hermit and I'm done with everything else.
Well, listen, I love it. Look, there's lots of ways to contribute to community. So, all of my social handles are at Jeff Davison YYC, and I wouldn't say I'm as active on social media as I once was, but I'm always happy to participate in community building and conversation and understanding what citizens think is the right move to make. Once you're in politics, you're always in politics. So please reach out with comments.
That's fair. So if you find him on Twitter and he doesn't have the little check mark for verification, don't worry, it's still him.
He just hasn't paid for it.
He's taking a pause.
Yeah. I like to think like Twitter's one of those things where I don't want to pay for the check mark. I mean, quite frankly, it's like I don't want to carry a driver's license because people should know who I am. I don't know. It's like it's the same thing, right? Now I'll have to explain on Twitter why that sarcastic comment was me just kidding and not actually serious. So you wonder why I don't go on social media anymore, right?
Oh man. Well, we always say with the responses, when you're a fan of hockey or if you're a fan of politics, please everyone remember, fan means fanatical. So we already know that you're a little bit crazy. All we ask at Two Guys in Hockey Talk is you be respectful and use sportsmanship. That's the key piece here. You can be bossy, but be kind. That's all we ask. A little bit of a leadership paradox. Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us for today's show. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about a new arena deal coming to place, whatever that may look like in the coming future.
We look forward to actually parking in the Jeff Davison parking lot so we can just walk across the street and get into the game.
So
it's a way to fund my kids' education. So I thank you for that.
So, so you guys can help fund that education. Next time we go down there, I think we'll post it on our social media. And if there's no sign down there anymore, we'll put a new one up for you.
I love it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers. All right, bud, man. Yeah, that's some interesting stuff that's going on down there in Calgary, eh? So do you think what do you think's going to happen with that? And we apologize to a bunch of our viewers tonight. Again, Facebook issues, they like to keep coming up. If you follow us on Facebook, hey, thanks for joining in. Want to thank a lot of our groups here today. You guys are following on Two Guys and Hockey Talk on Facebook through our feed, as well as over at the Sports Empire Network. Check out all the great stuff that they got going on. Hey, I just would like to say that interesting enough, this week, the storylines that we're seeing around hockey everywhere, it's fabulous. But the nation, now I just want to speak right now because I know the U.S. Has been playing and Canada has been playing in soccer.
Yes.
And what I mean, the World Cup has some good surprises this year.
It's been an exciting time. I mean, normally I'm glued to the TV watching hockey, but of course, when the World Cup happens once a year, I'm an avid soccer fan because you see the best of the best, and it's one of those things like similar, but not to the magnitude of the playoffs or Olympics.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of the world coming together to watch and celebrate their team. The guys or the men and women from their countries represent them. So it's pretty amazing. Canada, a hard blow today, losing 1-0. But Belgium is the second-rated best team in, the World Cup. So props to them. I mean, questionable.
I think they outplayed them.
Clearly reffing has transitioned from the NHL to the World Cup. So you guys, don't worry. It's universally terrible. So
Well, it only took a couple mistakes for Canada today. Is interesting enough, and they had some good chances. A little bit of the stress levels and stuff. But I definitely think if you were actually not looking at the score, and you watch that game, you would say Canada was the better team today, which I think is huge. I think that is huge. So hey, go Canada, go USA. By the way, to all you,
if people don't know, I'm Polish and I'm pure Polish, so I was born there. So I am cheering on my country. We tied with Mexico. I'm looking forward to waking up at 6 a.m. on Saturday to watch them face off. I believe Saudi Arabia is who's next. So, and they won. So, and there's been some upsets. Anyways, if you guys are watching the World Cup, it's been fun. The city, and I'm sure all of Canada is electric. There's been schools that have been closed just to watch. Alphonso Davies, who's a local boy, local legend, really just become a superstar. And as a fun fact, he plays for Bayern Munich, one of Leon Draisaitl's favorite teams. So him and Leon kind of keep in contact and kind of share in the sport, because Leon played soccer when he was younger.
So if you're listening and you're hearing about the local connection, it's because we're in the Edmonton region in
Yes.
Western Canada, for those that are following
Yes.
from other places. But okay, let's get to a little bit of hockey talk. If we can do this just for a moment, let me throw this up on our stream. Guys, I didn't get a chance to quickly talk last week about Braden Yager. What a wonderful character that this guy is. I just want to take a minute or two. Well, I say a minute or two, but you guys all know that actually it's not really a minute or two, right? So one of the things that's really, really good about this guy is a ton of fun to watch. So if you can even find some of his highlights, I know they don't show the mistakes, but he is threatening on the ice. He is attacked. He is a puck dominant type of a player, and he is highlight reel quality. Just watching him. I mean, and he goes in straight lines. Right now, that's what the Edmonton Oilers could use, but we'll just keep that on the backside of the burner and talk about that another night. But there is still room for him to add to his quickness. That's one of the things said. Now, Sam Constantino calls him dynamic. He says that this guy is a skater and will shoot at any time. And he takes other people into the fight with him, which essentially we know means that he is a leader. So the guy just loves to take control of the game with his shot and his high scoring abilities. So I'm going to encourage you to take a look, watch how he's actually playing the game right now. Interesting enough. So when you look at his stats, because he is playing for Moose Jaw, they're not a powerhouse team by any means. He's got himself about 25 points right now on the season in 21 games. But again, remember, this is that player that's going to maybe start at your third line, maybe move into a second line role player. So excellent player. Consider to follow this guy, man, if you get a chance. So
that's great. Now you guys know who to pick next for your upcoming prospect
mock draft.
You're making them. But
woohoo! Make
now,
my
Evan,
mocks early, baby.
I want to talk a few things, because
Okay.
I know that there's so many things going on in the NHL. There's so many teams to follow, so many storylines. But I just want to capture a few seconds of a few things I'm going to throw at you, and I want to know your thoughts.
Oh,
what
man.
Are your thoughts
you gave me no time to prepare on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you know hockey. I don't know hockey, so I'm trying to learn from you. This is what we're doing. We're bantering. What are your thoughts on this wonderful streak by the New Jersey Devils with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer, Dougie Hamilton playing, Vitek Vanacek having an unreal season? What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually will say that Zylstra has been a big fan of Vanacek actually for a while, but dating back to Washington. Now, of course, she likes the Washington Capitals. But I was not a believer at first, but obviously, he stepped right in there and he's done that job. That team is playing well, considering that they wanted to fire their coach and they were chanting early on.
Yeah,
and now they're having chants that they're sorry.
Sorry, Lindy. That's wonderful.
But you got to hand it to the creativity of fans. Yeah. One thing, this is what I will say. If you're listening in, and by the way, hey guys, in New York right now, welcome. I know it's a little bit later at night. It's like almost 9:45 if you're catching us live. And also, again, down in Arizona, you guys are kicking it tonight. But if you're in the States, I hats off to you guys. Your chants, the things you come. I look at Smashville. I want to get somebody on that has some background that we can have some conversations around the hockey world with some Nashville Predator people. Because if you hear the chants, even when they made their run to the Cup, I mean, it's amazing. Canada, we got no chance, dude. We got no chance. Now, going on a bit of a rant, all we say is, let's go. Let's go. Here we go. Here we go. That's all we got, man. It sucks. We are terrible in Canada. Get some chance. Get some fun. Maybe bring people from football and basketball and volleyball. Maybe that's the kind of people we need in here. That's my rant for today, and I'm sticking to it. And by the way, man, the Devils are looking sweet. Let me just say they are no longer a pretender. They are a contender. You obviously
Wow.
you obviously are liking them. So
I'm
let me ask you this question. We talked quickly about it the other week. You're talking about a hot team. Let's go back to another one. The Vegas Golden Knights. Throw
super,
it at me,
super good.
baby.
They are going elite. Now, when we first did the beginning of the show of the season, we had Leah Hextall. We had a few others and just comments about what the Vegas Golden Knights are. Will they make the playoffs? I didn't think they would, just because I was questioning their goaltending. You know, Logan Thompson, Aiden Hill, Laurent Brossoit, who was out for a bit. You know, Robin Leonard, normally he's there, but the problem is he's been injured, and he was most likely going to be injured all season. But that team is dynamic. Now, having a healthy Jack Eichel has been really positive. Having Bruce Cassidy behind the bench has really infused that back end. And let's not remember or forget, you have some of the best defensemen on that backhand. You have Braden McNabb. You have Alex Pietrangelo, Stanley Cup champion. You have Shea Theodore, who has become one of the best stars in the game. And I don't know why Anaheim let him go. I understand it was during the expansion, but that was a big loss to Anaheim. So good for the Vegas Golden Knights. They could potentially finish at the top of the division, and they are a deadly team. They are playing at a high altitude, and it's fun to watch. And one of the coolest things about Vegas Golden Knights is they are always over 100% capacity at their games because of standing room. So you're usually seeing between 101 and 104% capacity at that arena. T-Mobile Arena is rocking. Those people know how to come knocking, and they are going to blow everyone's socks off. So good on them.
Okay, so that's good. So let me throw another one at you. Let's switch the doors here right now, and let's look at some teams that are on the struggle side of it over in Washington right now this year. Talk about where Vandentek come from. Now, Washington has had a struggle. I know for me, I'm looking at Washington, and I did not see this happening. I did not see Washington kind of feeling like they were going to drop out this early. I mean, they are sitting right now at 17 points, having played 20 games. That is not Washington. And this is going to basically, if they make a push, what are they going to possibly push for a wild card? Because there's some pretty good teams in here right now. So, I mean, Ovechkin, okay, maybe he brings in 35 goals this year on a bad year. He's sitting at 9 over 20 games.
40 easily. The guy is unstoppable.
So you think he's going to get 40 at his current rate at 20 games? So 40, 56, 70, 80, another 30. Oh, man, he's going to have to push harder than he started his season to be able to get 40, and he doesn't know his end strong. So I don't know. 17 points in 20. I could see that, but right now he doesn't have a lot of good support around him. In fact, if you're thinking about this, guys, your second center is Dylan Strome. Now, Dylan's a great guy. In fact, that's who Philly needed. One of our former guests there, beat writer for Flyers Nitty Gritty, Jamie Bascow, talked about that, because they essentially were left with nothing. They could have used a Dylan Strome this year, 100%. But I mean, your thoughts on Washington? Right. Do they have a chance to get out of this?
Things, and I think people will kind of see it. They are really missing Nicholas Backstrom, and with his injury, if he ever does return, what is that going to look like? Because players that have returned from the injury he has have never performed back to, or never gone back to 100%. And it's a tough league. It's a faster league. It's an older team. The other presence that they're missing is Tom Wilson. He is a force. For whatever you may think of Tom Wilson as a player, similar style of Brad Marchand-esque, he knows how to put up points. He's physical. He's speedy. He gets things done. He gets under people's skins. He can. He's one of the best at calling penalties. So you get that power play where Ovechkin can score from that point. Their goaltending is kind of meh. And they were missing, I believe, Carlson's back now, John Carlson. But John Carlson is not having the kind of season he needs to. Now, Dmitry Orlov is having a quietly good season. But really, John Carlson needs to step it up because he is one of their best goalies or one of their best defensemen. And for the money he's making and what he's supposed to produce. And just remember, he was in the Norris conversation in 2019, 2020, or 2018, 2019. So the guy can play. And I know they signed Sonny Milano from who did a PTO, got dropped by Calgary. But They need more depth scoring. Ovechkin, that's all he's doing. Now, they may need to do a retool. They may need to work on a few little things. But when Darcy Kemper isn't having the best season, he's struggling, and your backup Charlie Lindgren isn't 100%, like his numbers aren't really good. I believe his save percentages is below 900, but Evan, you can correct me and check.
Yeah.
Then that's not a recipe for success. The one good thing I will say about the Metro, just like the Pacific, is that it's a wild card. No team has really stood out and been like, hey, like we are going to take over. Carolina, solid. Philly has really dropped off, right? Pittsburgh, kind of similar to Washington, but really has picked it up in the last little bit, but struggled when they began. You know, they went on that 6-game losing streak, was not good. So Columbus, I don't know what Columbus is thinking. They've really struggled. So really, you know, and then you have the Rangers and Islanders. Rangers are very hot and cold, and the Islanders are pretty solid. So really, apart from maybe Carolina and Islanders, that third spot is up for grabs. So really,
okay, that's fair.
So that's the positive coming out of the Metro for the Washington Capitals. That being said, they need to get younger. They're one of the oldest teams, and they need to infuse some youth. Connor McMichael, great prospect from a couple of years back, really good numbers, but he's only one guy. You got to replenish the stock down in your farm team.
Wow. Okay, give me one last thought here. I want to run back to you back to back on another team that's not started the year the way that they, let's just say, I guess that the way that they originally had hoped. Everyone saw them as a major contender early on, and it's not turned out that way. Now they've been doing a little better, but that is the Minnesota Wild. In 19 games, they got 20 points, 9-8-2, which actually means that they've got 9 wins and 10 losses, even though 2 are overtime. So they get that, we call it the Bettman point in the NHL.
I'm not a fan of that. I think they got to get rid of it, but that's just me.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fair. But if you think about this, they are exactly 0 on goal differential. They've been struggling. So they got 55 goals scored, 55 against them. Not terrible against, but also not great either, right? When they're not scoring a whole lot. So that's, it seems, where they're actually dealing with this more. So what do you see happening here with Minnesota? Do you see some moves being made? I mean, Guerin's the GM there. He's a mover shaker sometimes.
I mean, again, I could say something right now that they'll make a trade, and you know, or they won't make a trade, and you know, tomorrow I'll be proven wrong that there'll be a big trade. I mean, really what it comes down to is their cap strap. They are really cap strapped through those buyouts that they did for Ryan Suter and Jared Spurgeon, was it? Or I'm trying to remember the other one guy. That really hurt them. Getting rid of Talbot was not a good idea. I know publicly at the draft there were some issues, but when Marc-Andre Fleury went down, you struggled having a number 1 goal contender. Now, Fleury's also older. He's getting to that point, the Craig Anderson, you know, where his body's been through a lot and he can't perform. He can't play. You know, Mike Smith last year, too, was a prime example. Like, you can only play X amount of games before you get back to it. And really, their depth scoring hasn't been there. You know, Joel Eriksson Ek hasn't been what they wanted him right away. Like, he's still solid, but he hasn't put up the point. Kirill Kaprizov, he's putting up decent numbers, but not what we expected for him. He's supposed to be top 5 in scoring. He makes Minnesota hockey fun. Hasn't really happened. You know, Ryan Hartman has kind of had a regressive year. Matt Dumba hasn't really been playing well on the back end, right? So, I mean, really, what can you do? That team is it's a tight and difficult situation. I don't know how Minnesota fixes it. Dean Evison has really gotten the best out of that group, and I like his coaching style. I don't know what it is that Minnesota can do to really get out of this rut, right? Because they are a good team. It's just tough to navigate. Now, again, Minnesota fans, like Washington fans, you're not out of the woods yet. You're not at the bottom. You're not Arizona. No dissing to Arizona. But you're still in it. You know, 9-10 isn't the best, but you can still compete for a wild card spot. And apart from Dallas and really Colorado, the Central, I mean, I guess Winnipeg too is up there. You know, they lost.
Yes.
Like really, I could see 4 teams making it out of the Central. Nashville has like really struggled. They've come out a little bit. Arizona's not doing so well in that division. So, and Chicago is like competitive, but still not up there. So you
Yeah.
could still get that fourth spot, especially since how wild the Pacific is. So again, no.
You know what I find interesting? So we're going to get ready to wrap up, guys, here. But one of the interesting things is when they decided to go with Fleury instead of Talbot, I believe that was a mistake. I think that Guerin was thinking because of his faithfulness, his connection to Fleury. That was why I believe Fleury stayed. I think it sent a bad message to a lot of people. Talbot was playing very well for them. I don't have the stats in front of me. You can go check them out. But I believe Fleury is sitting around like 905 this year and is not good. But also realize Fleury is the clutch goalie. It's not that he actually has a high save percentage most years. Last year, he was sitting between, I think, 906 and 910 maximum when he was between Chicago and Minnesota. So, and then even I believe it was his second year in Vegas, he had like around a 906 or 907 or so guys, don't overthink with Fleury. I just think it was a bad move that wrecked a lot of the confidence in that room. And I think that Guerin made a mistake, and if he could take it back, he won't tell you and I that, but inside, I think that he would. So but yeah, it's some interesting stories.
906 right now with 6 wins, 4 losses, and 2.80 goals against. I also want to report breaking news that the Toronto Maple Leafs have broken the New Jersey streak. So props to Toronto for that. Way to go. Way to end that. But good for the New Jersey Devils. That's a good cushion to have to lose the first one in after 13 games. You're 14th. That's not bad. You've really set yourself apart. Now, final thoughts. Awesome. Evan, I want to know one thing, and I want to know right now who do you believe, and this is on the spot, I haven't asked it, who do you believe is the first coach to go in the NHL? Because we're almost quarter way of the season. We're almost at American Thanksgiving, and usually we've seen a firing by now. Who do you think is on the hot seat?
I think it's still DJ Smith over in Ottawa. I said at the beginning of the year, and I still think it. I think that he's the one that's actually. I know a lot of people are talking about Bruce Boudreau. You know what? If these teams are in the playoffs, this is what I think. I think they're waiting as long as they can because they don't want to make a coaching change and then have like Vancouver had, and all of a sudden things start changing around, or like Edmonton when they brought Woodcroft up and things start changing around. If you got a chance this year, guys, I'm just going to add it back in the stream. Look at these players. You got Bedard, man. Right now, the guy is over 2 points a game. Mishkov, the Russian, he might be a while away. Fantilli playing in the NCAA, getting more than basically 2 points a game. Zach Benson with the ice. You got Yager, I talked about today. We talked about Leo Carlson. Like, it is packed in the top 15 right now. And all these guys that we're talking about, some of these bad coaching teams, when it comes to this, Pavel, I think you're looking in the top 10. You got good players, and that's just where I have them. Some of these guys that are ranked 14, 15, actually, a lot of teams could be interested in them. So I think DJ Smith is going to be the first one to go because as long as they keep losing, they're going to feel pretty good about where they are and have a good chance at one last year. And then I say they go for it.
Good prediction. So
who are you going with? Who are you going with?
Well, I will agree with you that Bruce Boudreau won't be on the hot seat just because they're still paying Travis Green, and I don't think the organization wants to pay 2 ex-coaches and then bring somebody else up, even though I know they have Mike Yeo there, who used to be a head coach, not only for the St. Louis Blues, but I believe for the Philadelphia Flyers. You guys can correct me. I'm going to say that Dallas Eakins out in Anaheim is on the hot seat. They have not won a game in regulation yet. So there's a lot of things. Good. And I know Anaheim wasn't expected to be competitive in the sense of making the playoffs, but they've struggled more than I expected, right? So really, I think there's going to be some heat on Dallas Eakins. That being said, maybe like you were talking about the drafts, the organization is licking their lips for having Connor Bedard play with Mason McTavish because they played in juniors together and they had extreme chemistry.
Oh, they were good,
So imagine if Connor Bedard goes to Anaheim, you know.
Oh, could you imagine what everyone would be saying?
The other one that I think is honorable mention is, and and I know it may not happen immediately, is Don Granato in Buffalo, but whatever's happening in Buffalo, it's not working. They're back to their losing ways, and it's been tough.
Yeah. Well, so this is what I'm going to say, guys. We're looking at this right now, and I'm telling you, it's between Chicago, Vancouver, Columbus, Ottawa, and Anaheim. So those are the people that are in that running. Oh, I actually think I do not think Arizona is going to be in the bottom 3. I think that they're going to be around the 5 to 7 mark.
And what about
overall? Montreal? Yeah, Montreal's playing well enough, I think, with their season. Like, I mean, Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. Well, you know what? We should have been 2 guys in overtime because we've done it again. We're already a couple minutes past. I haven't put on the closing remarks. We got to call it a close. I just want to put a big shout out to a couple things here tonight. Guys, our account went down and again tonight. My account shut off on the one. Thanks to over at the Sports Empire Network. They've been recording everything for us. So I will be re-putting the stream up again and cutting down the old one and putting up a new one again for you guys out there soon as we get off and do the recording from this one. And so, again, my apology. You're not going to be live with it, but you will get the full episode instead of being cut off at 31 minutes when Jeff was just about to become an armchair GM down in Calgary.
That's okay. We appreciate Jeff coming on the show. Thank you again. Remember, guys, to like, share, subscribe, give us a follow, not only on Facebook for news, but on Twitter. You can find Evan on Twitter on RevanEv. You can find us at hockey_2. You can give us a follow on our YouTube channel. We love seeing you on YouTube. Give us a shout. Give us a holler. Remember, we love hearing from you. We appreciate all our fans. You guys make our dreams possible to talk hockey. Thank you for tuning in every Wednesdays. Remember, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We appreciate you tuning in later through the week, early mornings, late nights, whether you're working out, doing dishes, or walking the dog. We love it. We appreciate everything you guys do for us. And I'm thankful to all our fans and all the people who love hockey as much as we do.
Yeah, we're honored just as much. Just as I'm going to add to the sentiment that Pavel's saying to everyone, we're honored that you guys come on our show. We will keep trying to bring great content on as much as we can. We like to have fun, and we like to continue to give you the best that we got as we pour it out week after week. So again, thanks to our guest, Jeff Davison, former Ward 6 councillor, chair of the event committee in Calgary, that they blew the deal he had. So now they're going to pay for it with a few $100 million more, I'm sure, on the next deal. So anyway, check out the episode. If you're catching us a little bit late, you can hear what is happening, and you can follow him over on his social medias. So in the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice.
Cheers, everyone.